Hello again. In this video, I want to go over a couple memes from the Goyim Defense League, as they're called. You might have seen these dudes in the news. They sometimes like drape banners over freeways and drop flyers, stuff like that, mainly just trashing Jews. And in this video, I want to cover their meme on the prawn industry. I'm just going to refer to it as that to avoid any YouTube censoring. And I lied, I'll probably cover their other meme on gun control in a separate video just to make this one kind of short and snappy. So starting with the first one, we can just go through it one by one. MindGeek is a large company that owns several websites and was founded by Fabian Thielman. I found no evidence that this guy's Jewish. He was born in West Germany in the 70s, and I mean, I'm just gonna be honest, there wasn't really that many Jews left in Germany at this point. I'm not saying it's like impossible that he's Jewish, but I've just seen no evidence beyond like far-right sites saying he is, which is like no evidence at all. And Tillman bought what is now known as MindGeek from Stefan Manos and Wissam Yusuf, I believe is how you pronounce their names, and I think one of them is Greek and the other is like a Syrian guy, and other Syrians as well were involved. Later on, the Anton brothers, I don't know how to pronounce that, were co-owners. The history is a little confusing, and there's been numerous name changes and different owners, stuff like that. But the basic, like, foundational starters, I guess, of the company were Tillman, Yusuf, and this Manos guy. And the only time I see a Jew involved is David Marmerstein Tassilo. However, Tillman did sell his stakes in the company to Anton and Marmerstein, and this was when the company, formerly known as Manwin, was rebranded as MindGeek. But it's not like the core of the company changed or anything. It was always like a posting site. And even now, both Anton and Tassilo have resigned. And the owner right now is Ethical Capital Partners, ran by a dude named Rocco Meliambro, who presumably is just like this Italian guy. So I guess at most you could say that one of the co-owners at a certain point of the rebranding of the company known as MindGeek was Jewish. But I don't know why you would call it like a Jewish website or anything and not like a Syrian one or a German one or anything like that, so kind of silly in my opinion. And you'll have to forgive me, a lot of this stuff is just based on Wikipedia. That's like the only way to get sources from this stuff. If you actually go to the websites, I'll just say right now, you're not going to find like the board of directors or anything like that. So basically just have to use Wikipedia. Next up, we have Pron was founded by Matt Kieser, who there's no evidence he's Jewish, and then bought by MindGeek later on. So basically just goes back to MindGeek. RedTube, the wiki doesn't say anything about any like specific founder, and like nothing, I couldn't find anything else on the internet about that. It was bought by MindGeek, but before then it was owned by Bright Imperial Limited, but couldn't find much about them either. Chatterbait, there's no information on any of like the original founders. It's owned by Multimedia LLC, was apparently owned by a different LLC previously, but honestly there's really just no information about any of these companies. They're just probably not too keen on posting people's personal info, I imagine. I'm not really sure, but frankly a lot of these companies are not like super easy to ascertain who founded them and like the major players, so there's like really no evidence either way, so I'm not really sure why they portray it as like a Jewish company. Wicked Pictures is probably the first company that you can pretty much just say yes, it was founded by a Jew, Steve Orenstein, although the owner now is Axel Braun, who, as far as I know, is Italian and the son of Las Braun, born Alberto Ferro, and he was an Italian. So that's it for Wicked. Moving on to Vivid. I know Steve Hirsch is Jewish. I did some digging on that, and he definitely is. And he was like one of the co-founders and a co-owner, along with a guy named David James, who apparently was originally from Wales and started Vivid with Hirsch, but apparently likes to keep a low profile, and there's no indication he's Jewish. I mean, not a lot of Jews in Wales. And then apparently a guy named Bill Asher is also a co-owner after his company got bought out by Vivid. Asher is like a Jewish last name, so he probably is, but he definitely wasn't like a co-founder or anything like that. Next we have Grindr, which, I mean, isn't a porn site. It's like a gay sex app, but the founder was a guy named Joel Simkai, who was a Jew from Israel who moved to New York City, and he seemed to be the owner of it until about 2016 when a Chinese company bought it, and currently the chairman is some Chinese dude and the CEO is a Georgian guy. Reality Kings was originally owned by RKNet Media, which I guess was a production company based out of Florida, and the website was founded in like the early 2000s. I couldn't find much about this production company. I think like the current president of the company is a guy named Robert Gardner II, so it doesn't really sound too Jewy or anything, but regardless, Reality Kings was bought by MindGeek, so it's basically like under that fold. Sex.com The domain name was first bought by Gary Kremen, who's Jewish, in 95, I believe. And funnily enough, he and this guy named Cohen had this big beef over like who really owned sex.com. But I mean, basically, it was like this Jew on Jew lawsuit, whole thing that lasted for years. And the whole thing was that it was like one of those early domain names that was just bound to be very popular. Kremen also bought other domain names like autos.com and cars.com, stuff like that. However, I'm not sure like how built up the site was during this whole time, and at this point has been sold various times to different people, but definitely the whole thing initially started with Kremen and this guy Cohen. X Videos was founded in Paris by Stephen Michael Picaud, some French guy. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I couldn't find any evidence of him being Jewish or not, and yeah, that's all I could really find on that. Bang Bros, the founder is listed as Christopher Hinson, not a Jewish name and no evidence that he is, and the current owner is the same owner of X Videos, so nothing there it seems. X Hamster was co-founded by two Russian dudes. There's just no information on them besides their names, and the names aren't particularly Jewish. Owned by Hammy Media, and there's not too much information on that. I think like obviously the whole point of a lot of these sites is to have companies that are kind of shady and dark and in like places with low taxes where it's not very public, like you don't really know who's the owner or anything like that. The director, according to this one website, is this like, I don't know, probably like Greek Cypriot dude. I don't even know I don't even know what language that is or alphabet. Mofos is owned and created by Brazzers, so we'll get to Brazzers later on because that's more well known. The next two, Blacked and Tushy, are owned by the same guy, Greg Lansky, who started Vixen Media, and he's a Jew from France, so that's accurate. Blacked is like pretty famous from all like the memes and shit about it. I don't know much about Tushy Media, but I mean Tushy is like a Yiddish word, I think. So anyway, those two are accurate. Although I will say he had some business partners who helped him start Vixen Media who don't seem to be Jewish. But I think definitely the main guy behind these two was Lansky, who has since moved on to other stuff. But yeah, that's definitely his legacy. Brazzers was started by the same people who like were involved with MindGeek and Mansif, Manwin, all those companies in the past from Montreal. So I would just say it's like an outgrowth of that conglomerate, if that makes sense. Match.com was one of the first like dating apps, if not like, or not even an app, it was like a website and maybe like the first one, and that was started by Gary Kremen, the same dude who bought Sex.com. But I will say Match.com is like, it's not like a hookup app, it's not Pron or anything, it's just like a normal dating service. So I don't know, it'd be like saying the guy who founded eHarmony was like a bad dude or something. Like it just doesn't really make much sense. And he had some other co-founders, and I think the current CEO is like not Jewish, some Arab guy. But anyway, it doesn't really matter because it's like, I don't really see it as like on par with any of these other sites that we've discussed so far. Now, Tinder, on the other hand, is basically a hookup app, or at least that's how it started, and was founded by Sean Rad. So definitely had Jewish founders, but the current CEO is some Asian guy and is currently owned by the Match Group, which kind of came out of Match.com, and I guess like owns most of the dating apps nowadays, but is run by non-Jews, although I think in the past was run by Jews. So I mean, you get to a point where everything is just so connected and changes hands so much that it's kind of difficult to find out like the one person behind everything. But yeah, Tinder was founded by Jews. OkCupid is another dating app, but again, not really like a hookup one, and apparently has multiple founders, and I couldn't tell if any of them were Jewish. Maybe the Max Krohn guy, not too sure. The Sam Yagan guy apparently is from Syria, so I don't think he's Jewish. And something I'm going to talk about later, but there does seem to be a disproportionate amount of Syrians involved in a lot of this kind of stuff, so I'll mention that later. And yeah, OkCupid is another dating app that is owned by the Match Group. Plenty of Fish, another dating app that's not a hookup app, founded by Marcus Friend, who's not Jewish, but is owned by the Match Group again. But yeah, I'm not really sure why they're mentioning like some of these dating apps. It's kind of like random. XNXX.com is just another French prawn website, owned by the same people who own X Videos. Again, there's just like not much about it. Yeah, there's really nothing I could say about that one. Slade is just another one owned by Vixen Media Group, which was owned by Greg Lansky. Bumble was founded by a woman who was one of the co-founders of Tinder, and she started it when she broke off from Tinder, and I guess she's like half Jewish, half Gentile. But again, like it's just like a totally normal dating app where the girl messages you first. I don't know, it's not like a hookup app, so whatever. And finally we have Penthouse, which is like a softcore prawn magazine. The wiki says it went into more like hardcore stuff later on. But regardless, I have no idea why they're bringing this one up, because this was started by Bob Guccione, who was Italian, and was one of the magazines that was supposed to be in competition with Hugh Hefner's Playboy, and Hefner was obviously not Jewish. Kind of similar to Hustler magazine, which was started by Larry Flint, also not Jewish. So I don't know why they're bringing up Penthouse, because, I don't know, this whole wave of like softcore prawn magazines for men, like none of that is inspired by Jewish dudes. And kind of talking about like what inspired and influenced a lot of this prawn to come about. Obviously like the internet led to a flourishing of this kind of stuff, but there were like movies back before the internet obviously that were popular, and like obviously some Jews were involved in that stuff, but like a lot of the early stuff also wasn't really involved with Jews. Movies like Deep Throat, also directed by an Italian guy, and The Blue Movie by Andy Warhol, the famous artist, were some of like the first kind of big movies to show nudity and sex on screen. And just to circle back to some of like the bigger prawn sites on the web, like Pronhub, definitely like a disproportionate amount of Syrian immigrants helped start that company. The Anton brothers, specifically Ferus Anton or Anton, and Wissam Youssef, as well as a guy named Stefan Manos, who I don't think he's Syrian, but he's probably like Greek. It sounds like a Greek last name. So I don't know. I think there's just something about like maybe more like instead of like Jews, it's more just like entrepreneurial immigrant types. Like, I mean, a lot of the other sites were started by like, sure, like Jewish people, but also, for example, Greg Lansky is like an immigrant from France. So I definitely don't think the common denominator is like Jewishness. And I mean, if these people were consistent, they would also have like a weird fixation on like Italians or Syrians, because I mean, people with Italian names and Syrian origin popped up a lot. Also a decent amount of French people. So yeah, I guess at the end of the day, I'd just say disproportionately involved, but so are other groups. And yeah, it's just like the same like all my other topics that I discuss. Oh, and real quick, I guess I'll go over some of the quotes they give too. So again, people like Fabian, I'm not sure if that dude is Jewish, and then Picard as well. David F. Friedman, he didn't really do prawn. He did like kind of B-list movies that were kind of like racy, I guess. I don't know. You can look into him if you want, but I don't think he was really like a big prawn kind of guy. Most of the other stuff is accurate. Yeah, like Al Goldstein said that in an interview actually with Luke Ford, who like converted to Judaism. He has like his own YouTube channel and stuff. Nathan Abrams' quote is accurate. He said that in like a conference about Jews and sex somewhere. He's written about Jews and prawn before, so it's definitely like a thing. I'm not gonna like deny that, but I mean, not his quote. I mean, I don't know what his quote was, probably just like off the cuff, like some weird shock value thing. But like he's written about Jews and prawn, and like, I mean, it's a thing for sure. And then lastly, when it comes to Roth v. United States, this was a case where some Jewish guy in New York was charged with this obscenity for sending stuff over the mail that had like nude images or whatever. And there wasn't really like a set standard methodology to figure out what was obscene or not. There were previous cases where there was just like issues with what, you know, kind of images and publications could be published, but essentially Roth v. United States like set a new standard for deciding what is obscenity, and Roth like lost the case and wasn't ultimately charged with obscenity, but the whole point, I guess, of the case is that it kind of in effect did loosen obscenity laws, because it just changed the standard of like how obscenity was viewed. And regardless, there were cases after Roth that kind of tweaked this standard, and later on Miller and Miller v. California that once again changed the standards. So I don't know, pinning all the blame onto Roth v. United States, like that doesn't make too much sense, because there were just like other cases that dealt with obscenity and things of that nature. So, but anyways, I'm gonna post a little image of like the stuff crossed out that I don't think is really exemplified by being Jewish, of like the original meme. And yeah, I think I'll respond to a couple more GDL memes in the future, but just been really busy lately, so this one will have to do for now. But yeah, thanks for watching and subscribe. Peace.